Om Namo Narayana. We are starting chapter 16, how Parikshit received the age of Kali. In the previous chapter, we saw the end of Krishna, or as I heard about the end of Krishna, and the beginning of the Kali Yuga. A emotionally tough time, very, very difficult to process what that might mean. So here we continue the story. As Sutta Goswami said, "Oh, learned Brahmanas, Maharaja Parikshit then began to rule over the world as a great devotee of the Lord, under the instructions the best of the twice-born Brahmanas. He ruled by those great qualities which were foretold by expert astrologers at the time of his birth. He married the daughter of King Uttara and begot 4 sons headed by Maharaja Janameyaja. Maharaja Parikshit, after having selected Kripakarya for guidance as his spiritual master, performed 3 horse sacrifices on the banks of the Ganges. These were executed with sufficient rewards for the attendants, and at these sacrifices even the common man could see demigods. Once, when he was on his way to conquer the world, he saw the master of Kali Yuga, who was lower than a Shudra, disguised as a king and herding the legs of a cow and bull. The king at once caught hold of him to deal sufficient punishment. Shanaka Rishi inquired to Sutta Goswami, why did Maharaja Parikshit simply punish him, since he was the lowest of the Shudras, having dressed as a king and having struck a cow in the leg? Please describe all these incidents, if they relate to the topics of Lord Krishna. The devotees of the Lord are accustomed to licking up the honey available from the lotus feet of the Lord. What is the use of topics which simply waste one's valuable life? Sutta Goswami, there are those amongst men who desire freedom from death and get eternal life. They escape the slaughtering process by calling the controller of death Yamaraja. As long as Yamaraja, who causes everyone's death, is present here, no one shall meet with death. The great sages have invited the controller of death, Yamaraja, who is a representative of the Lord. Living beings who are under his grip should take advantage by hearing the deathless nectar in the form of this narration of the transcendental pastimes of Lord Krishna. Lazy human beings with paltry intelligence and a short duration of life pass the night sleeping and the day performing activities that are for naught. Sutta Goswami replied, while Maharaja Parikshit was residing in the capital of the Kuru Empire, the symptoms of the age of Kali began to infiltrate within the jurisdiction of his state. When he learned about this, he did not think the matter very palatable. This did, however, give him a chance to fight. He took up his bow and arrows and prepared himself for military activities. He sat on a chariot drawn by black horses. His flag was marked with the sign of a lion. Being so decorated and surrounded by charioteers, cavalry, elephants, and infantry soldiers, he left the capital to conquer in all directions. And then he conquered all parts of the earthly planet and exacted tributes from their respective rulers. Whenever the king visited, he continuously heard the glories of his great forefathers, who were all devotees of the Lord, and also the glorious acts of Krishna. He also heard how he himself had been protected by the Lord from the powerful heat weapon. People also mentioned the great affection between the descendants of Vrishni and Pritha, due to the latter's great devotion to Lord Keshava. The king, being very pleased with the singers of such glories, opened his eyes in great satisfaction. Out of magnanimity, he was pleased to award them very valuable necklaces and clothing. Maharaja Parikshit heard that out of his causeless mercy, Lord Krishna, who is universally obeyed, rendered all kinds of service to the malleable sons of Pandu by accepting posts ranging from chariot driver to president to messenger, friend, night watchman, etc., according to the will of the Pandavas, obeying them like a servant and offering obeisances like one younger in years. When he heard this, Maharaja Parikshit became overwhelmed with devotion to the lotus feet of the Lord. Now you may hear from me of what happened while Maharaja Parikshit was passing his days, hearing of the good occupations of his forefathers and being absorbed in thought of them. The personality of religious principles, Dharma, was wandering about in the form of a bull, and he met the personality of earth in the form of a cow, who appeared to grieve like a mother who had lost her child. She had tears in her eyes, and the beauty of her body was lost. Thus Dharma questioned the earth as follows. Dharma, in the form of a bull, asked, "Madam, are you not hale and hearty? Why are you covered in the shadow of grief? It appears by your face that you have become black. Are you suffering from some internal disease? Or are you thinking of some relative who is away in a foreign place?" "I have lost my 3 legs, and am now standing on only one. Are you lamenting for my state of existence? Or are you in great anxiety because henceforward the unlawful meat-eaters will exploit you? Or are you in a sorry plight because the demigods are now bereft of their share of sacrificial offerings because no sacrifices are being performed at present? Or are you grieving for living beings because of their sufferings due to famine and drought? Are you feeling compunction for the unhappy women and children who are left forlorn by unscrupulous persons? Or are you unhappy because the goddess of learning is being handled by brahmanas addicted to acts against the principles of religion? Or are you sorry to see that the brahmanas have taken shelter of administrative families that do not respect Brahmanical culture? The so-called administrators are now bewildered by the influence of this age of Kali, and thus they have put all state affairs into disorder. Are you now lamenting this disorder? Now, the general populace does not follow the rules and regulations for eating, sleeping, drinking, mating, etc., and they are inclined to perform such anywhere and everywhere. Are you unhappy because of this? Oh, Mother Earth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead had reincarnated himself as Sri Krishna just to unload your heavy burden. All his activities here are transcendental, and they cement the path of liberation. You are now bereft of his presence. You are probably now thinking of those activities and are feeling sorry in their absence. Oh, Mother, you are the reservoir of all riches. Please inform me of the root cause of your tribulations by which you have been reduced to such a weak state. I think that the powerful influence of time, which conquers the most powerful, might have forcibly taken away all of your fortune, which was adorned even by the demigods. The earthly deity, in the form of a cow, thus replied, "O Dharma, whatever you have inquired from me shall be known to you. I shall try to reply to all those questions. Once you too were maintained by your 4 legs, and you increased happiness all over the universe by the mercy of the Lord. In him reside truthfulness, cleanliness, intolerance of another's unhappiness, the power to control anger, self-satisfaction, straightforwardness, steadiness of mind, control of sense organs, responsibility, equality and tolerance, equanimity, faithfulness, knowledge in the absence of sense enjoyment, leadership, chivalry, influence, the power to make everything possible, the discharge of proper duty, complete independence, dexterity, fullness of all beauty, serenity, kind-heartedness, ingenuity and gentility, magnanimity, determination, perfection in all knowledge, proper execution, possession of all objects of enjoyment, joyfulness, immovability, fidelity, fame, worship, pridelessness, and the being, as Lord Vishnu, eternity, and many other transcendental qualities which are eternally present and never to be separated from him. That personality of Godhead, reservoir of all goodness and beauty, Sri Krishna, has now closed his transcendental pastimes on the face of the earth. In his absence, the age of Kali has spread its influence everywhere, so I am sorry to see this condition of existence. I am thinking about myself, and also, O best among the demigods, about you, as well about all the demigods and sages and denizens of Pitraloka, devotees of the Lord, and all men obedient to the system of Varna and Ashrama in human society. Lakshmiji, the goddess of fortune, whose glance of grace was sought by demigods like Brahma, and for whom they surrendered many a day until Lord Vishnu gave up her own abode in the forest of lotus flowers, and engaged herself in the service of the lotus feet of the Lord. I was endowed with specific powers to supersede the fortune of all the 3 planetary systems by being decorated with the impressions of the flag, thunderbolt, elephant driving rod, and lotus flower, which are signs of the lotus feet of the Lord. But in the end, when I felt I was so fortunate, the Lord left me. Oh, personality of religion. I was greatly overburdened by the undue military phalanxes arranged by atheistic kings, and I was relieved by the grace of Lord Vishnu. Similarly, you were also in an internal, a distress condition, weakened in your standing strength, and thus he also incarnated by his internal energy in the family of the Yadus to relieve you. Who therefore can tolerate the pangs of separation from that supreme personality of Godhead? He could conquer the gravity and passionate wrath of his sweethearts by his sweet smile of love, pleasing grace, glance, and hearty appeals. When he traversed my service, I'd be immersed in the dust of his lotus feet, and thus would be sumptuously covered with grass which appeared like hairs standing on me out of pleasure. While the earth and personality religion were thus engaged in conversation, the saintly King Parikshit reached the shore of the Sarasvati River, which flowed toward the east. And thus ends chapter 16. As we slowly make our way to the end of Canto 1, believe it or not. Meaning of this chapter, this book, is that the loss of Lord Krishna didn't just affect people, it affected everybody. It affected the earth, it affected animals, it affected Dharma itself. Thus, what life was like when the Lord stepped on it was unbelievable. Because the Lord is not just a human. It's not just a prophet or a speaker or a teacher. The Lord is the earth. It's everything. The Lord, I almost want to say that's, I guess, how we know when people today say, oh, I am a God, or I am Jesus incarnate, or I am, whatever the God that, I'm saying I am, and you should worship me. All these gurus have no powers. They don't affect anything. You could say they do, and some people say stories that they do, but it's questionable. I once heard a story about a guru who stopped a forest fire from spreading, though it was said by the forest fighters after the fact that the forest fire actually was going in the opposite direction anyways, so it wasn't like the guru stood there and stopped it and changed its course. None of these gurus that are in this world do what Krishna did. So if Krishna is really back, or reincarnated, or Jesus, or whoever, how come he doesn't seem to have any influence? I guess I've just debunked a lot of gurus. Anyways, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.